Persona 5's gameplay is split into two largely separate sides, a social simulator and a dungeon crawler. Most of the interactions between these two sides, outside of the narrative, are in the form of accomplishments from one side giving rewards to the other. This is generally considered to be one of the series' main selling points. To argue that a game shouldn't have two distinct sides like that would be similar to people who argue that games shouldn't have stories. If you want a story, read a book, they say. Well, fuck them. I like games and stories. Sure, putting them together can be limiting in some ways, but it also has some unique advantages. For instance, if the story really makes me hate a villain, then finally getting to kick his ass in a boss fight will feel far more satisfying. Hell, this concept is why there's so much porn of fictional characters. Sure, I could look at some random hot girl being tied up and gagged, but that's not what I searched for, dammit. I want to see Haru tied up and... Wait, I'm off topic. What was this video about? Pacing. Right. One of the potential advantages of having two distinct types of gameplay in Persona 5 is that, with proper pacing, the game can help you keep from burning out. Getting a little tired of dungeon crawling? No problem. Hop back into the real world and hang out with your friends. The game's real world. Not the real world. Not that I don't have friends in the real world. I totally do. Anyway, you spend some time with your real game world friends, but eventually you can't take any more of their whiny ass problems. That's okay, by now you're probably itching to get back to killing shit. Palace ho! Or should I say Palace he-ho? So what's the problem here? Other than my terrible puns? Well, basically, the game utterly fails to promote good pacing between its two sides. Most people who have played Persona 5 will tell you the goal is to complete palaces in as few days as possible and to collect a whole bunch of missions for each trip to Mementos. Every day you spend in a palace or Mementos is punished by a loss of time in the social game. Sure, you could argue that if you don't like 5 hours of consecutive dungeon crawling, then it's on you to pace yourself between multiple days. But why the fuck is the game punishing me for trying to enjoy it? Now, the game does try to encourage splitting up palaces in some ways. They force you to use a separate day for the boss of each palace, as well as some palaces putting a cognitive barrier somewhere in the middle. Though, bafflingly enough, they force you right back into Sai's palace the day after hitting the cognitive barrier, making that one pretty fucking pointless. Regardless, the lion's share of most palaces are still possible to complete in a single day, and if that takes more than 5 fucking hours, then I should have the option to break that shit up without being punished for it. Safe rooms help a little by giving you potential breakpoints that at least won't punish you with a loss of progress, but this isn't an incentive to use multiple days, just a mitigation of punishment. The biggest reason to actually leave a palace before you've progressed as far as possible is because you've run out of a limited resource. Persona 3 tried to make a resource specifically for this purpose, the tired condition. This made your party members shittier in battle if you spent too long in Tartarus, and they would eventually even just fuck off and go home without you. This was annoying. The concept isn't inherently bad, but it would need to be well crafted with the player having some meaningful control over how efficiently the resource is used. Like, say, if the amount you tire depends on how efficiently you win each battle. Like, taking lots of damage tires the characters out, and using more powerful attacks tires them out faster than smaller, easier attacks. And wait, I think I just described SP. Okay, maybe it's best not to convolute things with an extra resource. And I guess the Persona devs agree, since tiredness never came back after Persona 3, but still worth taking a moment to consider why. Now, SP. Persona 5 actually takes a significant step towards using this as a limiting resource for dungeon exploration, in that there's never an in-dungeon way to full heal your party. Persona 3 and 4 both had a means of this, and while P4 made it absent or prohibitively expensive for the earlier dungeons, by mid-game you could easily maintain SP indefinitely. Without these instant ins, it's actually possible for SP to be a limiting resource. In fact, in my first playthrough, I believe I actually did have to take one extra day in the first palace. Would have for the second palace too if they didn't force you to take it in 2 chunks with the story-contrived barrier. Sadly though, SP soon becomes mostly a non-issue anyway. The biggest reason for this is the SP adhesive accessories that restore SP to the wearer every turn. By Palace 4 I had an SP adhesive 3 for every active party member. Okay, full disclosure, I did look into how I might get some SP restoring items, and upon learning of the accessories, I whored myself to the good doctor like an addict in a back alley. But hey, I got my SP fix, and once I had it, there was never any need to pull out of a palace before finishing. Granted, this was still an improvement over the previous games where, once the Insta-In was available and cheap, there was never even a reason to play conservatively with SP. So long as you could make it to the next checkpoint, you were fine. In Persona 5 though, even after getting the SP adhesives, my party's SP could easily go down over time if I wasn't careful. It was still important to spread out who used skills and to not use their most powerful skill when a weaker one would suffice. Also, kudos to the devs for making enemies flee and raise the alert level if you tried to delay for too long just guarding repeatedly to restore SP. You could still do this a little bit at the end of battles, but it was reasonably discouraged, which is definitely a good thing. Still, despite all this, I never had too much trouble keeping my SP up throughout a palace. And of course, the SP adhesives aren't the only means of sustaining. SP restoring items become stupidly plentiful once you max out Kawakami and Sojiro's confidants. So what do I suggest? Firstly, get rid of the damn SP adhesives, or at least make them significantly less effective. Like, instead of restoring 357 per turn, make it 123. Hell, if nothing else, this would allow me to actually use my accessory slot instead of everyone wearing the same damn accessory for the last 3/4 of the game. Of course, you should do the same to Invigorate, and maybe adjust the Spirit Drain skill too. As for items, I'd probably limit Kawakami to 1 coffee and 1 curry a week. Might have to weaken them a bit as well to get the right balance, but I do like having a decent supply of SP items whose uses can feel impactful. Like if they let you get to 1 more safe room on your current palace visit, where you use items to keep Joker going until everyone else is tapped. Also, I would flatten SP costs across skill tiers. For instance, instead of 4-8-12 for the basic damage skills, I would do 4-6-8. This is because I find myself far too attached to my lower tier skills. I mean, most battles end with a negotiation or all-out attack anyway, so the extra damage of the stronger skills rarely even matters outside of bosses. Hell, when party members other than Joker learn new skills, I often think, ah fuck, that just got a lot more expensive, rather than, sweet, a new skill. I feel like they should be aiming more for the latter. Of course, this change would require a lot more rebalancing, max SP growth, SP restoring items, etc., but that's just a bunch of number stuff. If balanced well, these changes should cause most players to split their dungeon crawls across multiple days, leading to better pacing between dungeon crawling and social time, which I believe will lead to a better overall experience for most players. However, none of this addresses the original problem. It feels like the game punishes you if you spend more days than you have to in one of the palaces. And here's where I suspect a lot of people might disagree with me, assuming they don't already. I think the game should periodically force you to enter the dungeons. I would implement this as 1 force visit a week. You can choose the day each week as to still allow the player some control over their schedule, but if you haven't gone in by Saturday, Mona will drag your ass to the palace like a dead bird to the porch. I mean, why not? The little fucker already tells you to go to bed whenever he damn well pleases. No, Mona, we both know I'm not fucking tired. If you want to go have sex with the cats in the alley, be my guest. I don't judge, but at least let me read a fucking book while you're out there. Back on topic. Persona 5 gives roughly 3 weeks per palace, except the first one, which only gives 2 once you're actually in control of your time. This feels like a good number of visits for the dungeon crawling part of a palace, so I think I would change things so that the calling card has to be sent right before the deadline, and you have to take 3 trips in before that. Oh, and probably force 1 trip to mementos for each gap between palaces. With these changes, you're no longer punished for multiple trips to the palaces or mementos. Well, unless you exceed the force visits, but fuck it, at some point you deserve to be punished, and a week between visits should do plenty to help the game's pacing problems. I would also be sure to give clear signs for when you've made it far enough through each palace for the week you're in, which could easily be accomplished using the safe room progress checks. It kind of already is, but it would need to be a bit more precise. Right now there are times when you're told you're halfway in one safe room, then the treasure's just ahead in the next. Of course, now we're left with a bit of an inverted problem. People who finish the palaces early will feel like they're being forced to waste days going back after they've finished. It could be argued that this isn't a problem. In fact, it may actually be best to leave it like this so that people are encouraged to leave after the palace's prescribed section for the week. My issue with this, though, is that with SP being such a restricting resource, some people might feel obligated to grind through their supply every time they're sent to a palace. So what would I do about this? Well, let them. Or better yet, challenge them. For instance, at the end of each palace, put a portal to a challenge area. An endless series of randomly generated floors akin to mementos. But on these floors, make the enemies significantly harder than the rest of the dungeon, and once you go in, there's no turning back. When you leave the challenge area, you leave the palace. Perhaps even make it so that there's no saving, but dying expels you from the palace instead of giving you a game over. Of course, these floors would also have some nice rewards in them to make it worth your while, but nothing too great or unique, or we're kinda right back to punishing people who don't finish the palace in the first visit. Ideally, they could give some rewards that benefit you in the social side of things, as I'm not really a fan of rewarding skilled players by making them numerically stronger. That sort of thing only serves to make games easier for people who find them easy and harder for people who find them hard. However, they would have to be careful about giving social rewards, as they definitely wouldn't want going into the dungeon to be more beneficial to the social game than spending time in the social game. Anyway, the details of the challenge area can be figured out later. The point is, it would give players something to do with any unneeded palace days, while taking a lot less time and being a lot more entertaining than grinding through your SP in the main palace. So that's what I would do to improve the pacing between the dungeon crawling and social sides of Persona 5. What do you think? Would seriously restricting SP throughout the game be more frustrating than fun? Would forced dungeon visits piss you off more than your bedtime? Do you agree there's a problem with the pacing in the first place? Got any better ideas? Let me know and have an awesome day. The game tries to be clever by having Sojiro give you a journal to write down your activities in because he needs to report said activities to your probation officer. Writing in this journal is then thematically shown to be how you save your game. But, wouldn't your probation officer tell the police that you're a phantom thief? Guess it's lucky for us that Sojiro never got around to writing any of those reports.